crime. We will get the driver's information because he's operating a vehicle in the ways of the state, and he's required to be duly licensed. If that check comes back that there's a federal warrant for him for a homicide out in Arizona, yes, we're going to take him into custody. If he's here in the country illegally, those checks and notifications are going to be made to those federal agencies. But that's the only situation that I can think of that we would take someone into custody. Always have to have a warrant. Without a warrant, and the long and the short of it is too, is that they don't have to come to the Durham Police Department and tell us they're doing anything. They can show up at your house, Joe, and it could take you away if you get a warrant. And they don't need to notify us. So they can be in and out of the community. We would never know it. But I think what's valuable about this chiefs meetings is that we have that relationship with our federal partners. So they know that Rainey Kelly's the police chief in Durham. He's a square shooter, and they'll do that courtesy of letting us know that they're in our community. And they may ask us to come along, they may not. I will tell you that we will go whether they request it or not, if nothing else but to act as, in the realm of making sure that everybody's safe and things don't get escalated to a point where we have a really bad scene. So I know that was kind of a long, drawn-out answer to your question, but I hope I've conveyed to you the position of the Durham Police Department and the philosophy that we have as a department.
Thank you. Councilor Ford?
One last thing is that there's I'm sure you read about the departments that are signing on for this 287, I believe is the RSA, where they go through training to teach them how to be mini ICE agents. We're not in any way, shape, or form participating in that. So, one more thing to check off the list.
Thank you. Councilor Ford?
Just two quick things. Is that a warrant signed by a judge?
Federal warrant would have to be signed by the federal magistrate.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I've heard of them having warrants that weren't signed by a judge.
Yeah.
Okay. That was one thing. The second thing is, do you, Curtis, as the originator of this resolution, have an issue with taking out that additionally? If you don't, why don't we take it out?
You'd like to make an amendment to that?
Well,
I don't want to be too strident, but I do have some concern with it. And that gets into the conversation I was going to hopefully direct to answer a couple more questions. Understanding that the derivative of authority here is the limiting factor. And I want to articulate very resolutely and very clearly that I have complete confidence in your department. Chief Kelly and the newly Deputy Chief Dalton, your integrity and your devotion to duty and to this town is beyond reproach. And I am very proud to have you protecting us.
Thank you.
And I'm not supporting breaking the law. I'm not supporting Durham police looking the other way. I'm not supporting breaking the law that the federal or the state government has set. I am trying to articulate a resolution that reinforces upholding the law even to those wearing a badge. I'm not trying to make you choose between statutes and between loyalties, but it does seem like another organization is trying to make you choose between those loyalties by mandating these types of things and by joining forces with an organization that has publicly gotten it wrong many times in the last 6 months particularly. I do know that ICE and U.S. Marshals are operating out of Stratford County and that about 150 detainees are in Stratford County Regional currently. It is a matter of time before we have something that occurs in our own municipality. The thing I can't stop keeping myself up at night with heart rate and sweat, I have a couple of green card holder folks that live in my neighborhood. Kind, super awesome folks. I got 3 kids that are U.S. citizens, but they're green card holders. What happens when 2 unmarked vans roll up in the middle of the night with masked agents, basically looking like a gang, that whether they are federal agents or just vigilante bounty hunters, are going after my neighbors? Do I call the Durham police, or do I just watch it happen?
I would hope you would call 911 and let us get there in a hurry to find out what's going on. Yes, I mean, you have to assume that they're there for ill, intent if they don't have any markings or any badges displayed, and they've got masks covering their faces. Call us, call 911. We will be there within 3 minutes, I will guarantee you. And we'll make the determination, we'll identify them. If it's in fact, they're there for a lawful purpose and they have a warrant, then they have to do what they have to do. But yes.
So what happens when they don't have a lawful warrant?
That's a good question. I mean, we'd be on the phone with their bosses in a hurry. Number
But
one.
do my neighbors stay in their home while that's going on, or am I trusting that they don't get kidnapped and taken to Arizona?
I can't really speak to anything along those lines, Curtis. I mean, it's just, we could hypothetical things to death at this stage. But it's a bad look, I will tell you that.
Yeah. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Chief, and I don't try to play too many hypotheticals, but these aren't non-existent scenarios. These are documented, have occurred, and are still occurring. In Boston currently, there's a bunch of attacks going on, and obviously Los Angeles has got the United States Marines violating Posse Comitatus.
Yeah. I think you and I had this discussion, and I think you and I both agreed that if you are in that situation, probably the safest place to be right now is in Durham, New Hampshire.
I agree with that. Thank you, Chief.
Just want to say, is there something in the wording where we would be able to support the fact that we want to make sure that the law is being followed in terms of the warrants being legal, not stopping people without cause, without showing it linked specifically to, because even the way it's worded, it says Town of Durham and deriving authority from the town, and it says to include the police. But it doesn't need to say to include the police. It could be a separate sentence that says, we support our policies of these things through our police. Somehow just take those two and separate them.
That
I'm just
particular,
trying to,
yes, ma'am. That particular line was meant to
Forward it.
include UNH.
Any other comments on
no, I
this?
was just wondering that there's some way around how we would leave something in there without taking it out, or what are we thinking?
Councilor Nadal?
I was just going to say, I attended the presentation at the library. We had a presenter that came from the ACLU New Hampshire, and she did talk about the warrants, that they needed to be signed by a sitting judge. They also needed to have the correct date, and if they were at a house, it had the correct address. In other words, all that information needs to be correct. And also gave the impression that one should not open the door.
Right?
Don't open the door, don't start, don't just call 911, don't get
That's right.
part of it.
Exactly. We do have a policy on this topic, and I think, Council Register, you've seen that at
Yes,
least
sir.
in its earlier forms, and so many of the things that I discussed here tonight are in that policy, and all of our folks have been trained on it and signed off on it, and so that is in effect during the police department currently.
Councilor Ford, did you want to make an amendment or no?
Sure. I would like to offer an amendment to the resolution. I think the resolution is pretty clear where we stand. To remove, in the third to the last paragraph, everything from the word additionally to the end of that paragraph.
I'll second that. Is there any further discussion about that amendment?
Yes, I'd like to propose a different amendment to change that language.
Of course.
And that amendment would be, additionally, the town of Durham and all those who derive their authority from the town, to include law enforcement officers, shall request a judicial warrant before cooperating with, and shall charge special detail to, Any government organization that attempts to stop, question, apprehend, or locate any person solely based on immigration status. And also to clarify that bounty hunters may not operate within the town of Durham. So
there-
essentially, the change, shall not cooperate to, shall request a judicial warrant before cooperating, and shall charge special detail to.
I would second that.
Well, it's not
We
to be
have-
seconded at this point. There's an amendment on
Very
the
well.
table.
There's an amendment on the floor.
If you support that, you would vote against the current amendment.
Good to go, Chairman.
And
Well, if the
are there
amendment-
any other comments on the current
If
amendment?
this amendment passes, then further amendments can be offered.
That's right.
Yes. Thank you. Any other comments on the amendment? Mr. McKittrick?
Yeah, the second amendment could well be construed as interference with a federal agent in the performance of their duties. The state statute specifically prohibits that.
Which is what you said about the original paragraph that's troublesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments on the amendment?
I've taken 2 oaths of office this year, one in the New Hampshire House and once here, to obey the Constitution and laws of the state. The First Amendment offered, I don't think would put us in breaking our oath. The second one might, and that's my position. I had ICE follow me several times when I was working in Lynn, Massachusetts, advocating for students who'd been brought here as kids, the so-called DREAM Act students. It was terrifying, and still is, actually. But anyway, I would prefer to vote for the First Amendment, but not the second, but it's up to the council.
Councilor Friedrich, do you have something else to say?
I think my question was answered by the attorney, although I would love to hear if Chief Kelly had anything else to add to the language that I proposed. I would appreciate hearing.
I have nothing further to add, other than we don't charge anybody when we're called in for assistance, be it mutual aid or otherwise. So this would be something that we've never done in the past. Because we're not going to be calling people off duty to come in. It's going to be with the folks who are on duty, and they're getting paid by the town for the hour or however long it takes, so.
Thank you. Any other comments? We'll have a roll call vote on that amendment. Councilor Register?
No.
Councilor Ford?
Darrell Ford, yes.
Wayne Burton, yes.
Sonia Dell, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin vote nay.
Heather Grant, nay.
Councilor Friedrichs?
M. Friedrichs, nay.
Councilor Lund?
Eric Lund, aye.
5-4, aye.
Excuse me?
5-4, the yeses.
The yeses have the amendment 5-4. Are there any other amendments to be had? Councilor Friedrichs, your hand is up.
Sure, I guess I'd like to make a motion to further amend the language to what I had proposed, which I understand is a potential risk legally. It's a little bit perhaps of a gray area, but I think something worth potentially going to court over. So it would say, shall request a judicial warrant before cooperating with, and shall charge special detail to, any government organization that attempts to stop, question, apprehend, or locate any person solely based on immigration status, and that bounty hunters may not operate within the town of Durham.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion to that motion? Amendment. Councilor Grant?
Yeah, I agree with the first part, but I don't agree with the charging part. So I think that it's important that we have the right to look and make sure the paperwork is in place if they're approaching you. but I think that it was pretty clear we're not going to charge, and I think that that part's just going to bring a bunch of how-tos that I don't think is worth the fight.
Any other comments? I will say that Chief Kelly and Mr. McKittrick have both advised us not to accept this amendment. I don't want to be breaking the law or doing things that are against the law, or as Councilor Burton said, are violation of our oath to both the state constitution and to what we're here for. So I will not be voting for this amendment. Councilor Register?
I just want to clarify that the oath is to the Constitution of New Hampshire. And in the Constitution of New Hampshire, which are cited multiple times within the resolution, there are multiple rights that are being violated by the federal and state forces that are aligned with ICE. Searches and seizures, right to due process, the right to habeas corpus, and cruel and unusual punishments. These are, and now we're trying to go after birthright citizenship, which is why I don't see it as a violation of either of my oaths to the federal government or my oath to the state of New Hampshire's Constitution.
Other comments? Councilor Nadell?
Only that I recall from our last meeting that Town Administrator Selig was quite concerned about how his job might be jeopardized.
Okay. We'll have a vote on the amendment. Councilor Grant? If you're voting for the, you'd be voting for the amendment to add the additional language back into the resolution.
Nay.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, nay.
Cy Nadell, nay.
Wayne Burton, nay.
Darrell Ford, nay.
Curtis Register, aye.
Councilor Lund?
Eric Lund, nay.
Councilor Friedrichs?
Aye.
We have a,
There was 2 yeses and 7 noes.
Three.
Three yeses.
Three ayes,
I wasn't
6
one.
nays.
And Lund.
the resolution fails,
Fails.
the amendment fails. We now vote on the overall resolution.
I would like to propose an additional amendment then, which is to state that, to change the language to shall request a judicial warrant before cooperating with, and eliminate that part about charging special detail too. So leaving it just as shall request a judicial warrant before cooperating with any government organization that attempts to stop, question, apprehend, or locate any person solely based on immigration status. And the additional line about bounty hunters may not operate within the town of Durham.
I think we should see that in writing before we vote on the amendment.
I can share my screen, or I can share it in a chat if that's
Is
helpful.
there a second to this motion?
Second.
Councilor Burton would like to see it in writing.
Not that I don't trust you, I just want, it's a
And-
long one, and I want to make sure.
Chief Kelly and Mr. McKittrick, do either of you have an opinion of this amendment?
Like Councilor Burton, I'd like to see it in writing before I commit to that. I do think I have some concerns with it.
Em, can you say it and I type it?
Yes, I believe I'm not able to do, oh, yes, I can do share screen. Here. So, in this bold section here, the line where it says begins additionally, it would be changing the end of that sentence to say, shall request a judicial warrant before cooperating with any government organization that attempts to stop, question, apprehend, or locate any person solely based on immigration status.
Excuse me, we're not seeing this in writing, so.
Well, it is. It's
I
the
can't
bold
see
she
that.
changed.
Look right behind you.
Right.
I can't see that.
I can certainly make it larger.
Just bump it up a little.
We will, can you continue to make that larger, please?
There we go.
And again?
I can't see it.
I can read it now.
Get old eyes here.
Can you make it larger yet again, one more time?
Additionally, the town
I'm
of Durham
looking at, and also, we've asked for Chief Kelly's.
If I make it any larger, it won't fit on the, it won't fit on a
can
single
read it.
line.
Can you read it?
I can read it.
Can the council read?
Yeah.
Yep.
Request
Okay.
a
Thank you.
judicial warrant before cooperating with any government.
Councilor Nagel?
Chief Kelly, from what you have said this evening, I have the impression that that is part of the process that is already established by the Durham Police Department.
It is.
So I'm wondering whether it needs to be reiterated
I think
here,
it's good
or
to
needs to
have
be
it in
spelled out
writing.
here, or not.
But if we already do it, it's okay to say, this is what we do, and that way people are clear, then the people
Yeah.
that are worried will be clear that is the policy. Because, yeah, it's okay, it's in writing somewhere, but they're wanting to see that, I think. We
And I
all
think
want to
this-
see it.
This whole resolution is a regurgitation of pre-existing rights.
Mr. McKittrick?
I hesitate to question the chief, but in my opinion, since ICE has an absolute right under their interpretation of federal statute to proceed without even notifying a local police department or a state police department, Durham's requesting a judicial warrant, that's challenging their authority, and I think that would be construed as interference in the most conservative reading of that.
We would request to view the warrant, like we do if Rochester PD comes into town and says they have a warrant for this person. We look at, but we can't demand that they present it, number one. And number two, they can just say, okay, I'm not gonna show you, and we're gonna go get the guy or gal. So it really doesn't have a lot of teeth, other than it is our practice to ask for them to present that.
And the sentence about bounty hunters, are both of you comfortable with that?
I didn't see that in
That's
the
the last
Oh, I'm seeing
sentence.
now. Bounty hunters, assuming that that means that they're not authorized or deputized by the federal government, I think you have a right to limit private, well, could be private investigators or people who are hindering people without legal authority.
Is bounty hunter a clear term?
I haven't seen it used in years, and especially in New England. And I could look at that. Off the top of my head, I can't recall a single case where I saw bounty hunters in this jurisdiction, and meaning that First Circuit. I think that you might, bounty hunter is one who is not authorized or deputized by any federal agency. And if that were part of it in a footnote, I think that's fine. You have a right to limit non-police work in the town of Durham. The same way you could say, Joe, you can't sell, Joe, me, not you, sir. You can't go door to door selling magazines without authority from the town.
Are there any other comments on this amendment? We'll vote on this
I would
amendment.
just like to clarify that I think, to the chief's point, the language I suggested was particularly focusing on shall request, right? Not demand, but shall request before, and then again, before cooperating with. So again, it's not ordering or charging the Durham police to impede the actions of a federal agency or a state agency, but that shall request a judicial warrant before cooperating with themselves. And I agree that this is already a policy that Durham Police practices and is committed to, but I believe that having it in writing as a resolution does a number of things. It is reassuring to our residents and visitors, and also it provides example language to other police departments around the state and the country, frankly, who may not yet have such a policy in place. And I think that, the Durham police, a model police force in so many ways, and I think that this continues that exemplary status of the Durham Police.
I want to make one thing perfectly clear, that if we get a request for assistance from any law enforcement agency via, be it state, local, or federal, we will assist them to ensure officer safety only. So we're not going to turn down their request for assistance if they have a valid reason for that. So, and again, as I stated before, I would think that you would want someone from the police department there, if for nothing else, but to be a good witness and de-escalate if possible.
Councilor Register?
Councilor Friedrichs, I appreciate you putting together this amendment. Mr. McKittrick, thank you so much for looking at this stuff and giving us your blunt force opinion on things. Yep. Same thing, Chief Kelly. I greatly appreciate it. I want to make clear that this is not to protect criminals. I have no love for criminals, and I have no love to protect them outside of what is legally required by the law and by the Constitution. This is to protect innocent residents and citizens of this country and residents of New Hampshire. And I have no desire to have the Durham police have to turn their back on their brothers in blue. As a former Marine, I can understand the camaraderie, and when you get a troops in contact, you don't ask too many questions. You get there as soon as you can, and you protect the folks to your left and right that are wearing the same uniform as you, and you fire in the same direction, and I understand that. But I find that the conduct of certain officers and certain people who are wearing a badge similar to yours have kind of broken the sacred trust of that call. If you're going to call for support, it's not to have violations of the laws of war or breaking of the United States Constitution. And I think one particular point is the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, when Lieutenant Calley was having his platoon of Marines out of his control, attacking innocent folks in the Vietnam. And 2 helicopter pilots landed their helicopters and pointed their weapons at their brothers in arms because they knew what they was doing was wrong. I hope that we don't have to come to that here, but there is a very real risk to the innocent folks in Durham because of inappropriate conduct, not from Durham police, but from folks that are wearing the uniform. And though this is just a piece of paper and doesn't protect anybody past an email, I am greatly appreciative of this council and the members of the public that have spoke out in favor of it, because this is stuff that keeps me up at night.
We'll have a vote now. Councilor Grant?
I just wanted to say one last clarifying thing, which is to Chief Kelly's point, this language does not say that Durham Police Department must receive a judicial warrant before cooperating, but rather that they shall request a judicial warrant. So it does not prohibit the Durham Police from standing by or witnessing and potentially de-escalating a situation where there is not a judicial warrant that has been viewed.
Yes. Councilor Grant?
Aye.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Councilor Lund?
Aye.
Councilor Friedrichs?
M. Friedrichs, aye.
So we have an amendment now that is passed. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we are now going to vote on the overall resolution. Councilor Register?
Aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin vote aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Councilor Friedrichs?
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Councilor Lund?
Councilor Lund, aye.
Thank you. The resolution is passed. We appreciate all of your hard work and the comments made.
Inappropriate.
Thank you all. Thanks,
Thank you, too.
great discussion, I thought.
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. We now have on the agenda a public hearing on the
job,
possible adoption of ordinance 2025-07. I think we need to make a motion to open this public hearing.
Yes.
Would someone like to make a motion to open this public hearing?
I move the Durham Town Council does hereby open the public hearing on ordinance 2025-07, amending Chapter 175 zoning, Article 12.1, use and dimensional standards, Section 175-53, table of uses, to permit by right multi-unit residential in the post office, Churchill, and courthouse zoning districts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I have a question.
Yes.
I didn't hear separating CB1 and CB2. Are they not in this?
This is a different amendment.
It's a different amendment, it's a different resolution. There are two resolutions.
Which one is this?
This
I thought this was
is
9B.
This is
2025-07,
right, which does have the separation.
not in the one that, well, that may be, it's
This
not.
one, the three motions.
Sorry, I read the motion that was here.
Yes, no, you read the right motion.
Okay, yes, it does include separating CB1 and CB2, sorry. It does.
Okay, well, that's what
I
I
can,
thought.
I can,
Before we open the public hearing, I'd like to
Hold on,
suggest...
excuse me, please wait before
want me to
you
redo it?
speak. And there's still some conversation going on here in the room.
do you want me to redo it? I'm happy to. So I'll redo the motion.
The motion is going to be restated.
I move that the Durham Town Council does hereby amend Chapter 175 zoning, Article 12.1, use and dimensional standards, Section 175-53, table of uses, and Section 175-54, table of dimensions of the town code to separate CB1 and CB2 in the tables and to permit by right multi-unit residential in the post office, Churchill, and courthouse zoning districts.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay. Councilor Friedrichs, did you have a comment?
Yes, I have a concern about a point of order that I believe that this resolution went to the planning board as 3 separate resolutions. One being to separate CB1 and CB2, a second resolution to change those 3 districts to multi-unit, and a third resolution to change the height. I think that we need to consider them as 3 separate resolutions in order to respect the process where these need to, in order to respect how they were presented to the planning board. And I also think it will additionally facilitate the conversation.
The chairman of the planning board is here and would like to make some remarks. I think that would be appropriate at this time.
For clarity, you've already split CB1 and CB2, but when that was done, the table of uses had them still under the same column. All we're doing here tonight with regards to splitting CB1 and CB2 is taking the column on the table of uses and splitting it into 2. And you can, as is shown right there.
And is that section 175-54?
Yes.
Well, table of uses is 53.
Sorry, table of dimensions, well,
We're not on dimensions right now, we're on
yeah.
uses. So, it is,
The
it does
table.
appear
Okay.
there, yes.
Did you have any further comments?
I do. So, and it has a little bit to do with the whereases and whether or not you would want to take action tonight. So do you want me to speak now or during the public hearing?
We haven't voted to open the public hearing, so why don't we go ahead and see if we're going to do that, and then you can speak at that point. So there's a motion on the table to open the public hearing to make these changes to sections 175-53 and section 175-54 with one.
I move to open the public hearing.
Second that.
Is this for both? I think you've made that motion. I want to make sure that, this motion was made by Councilor Nadell,
And is there a second?
and it was seconded by Councilor Ford, I believe. Is that correct? Yes, and so we are open to voting on opening the public hearing for both of these. So Councilor Grant.
Aye.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Sine Adele, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Kurt Schweitzer, aye.
Councilor
Eric Lund, aye.
Friedrichs?
Friedrichs, aye.
Okay, the public hearing is now open, and we'd like to first hear from the chairman of the planning board, Mr. Paul Rasmussen.
I distributed prior to the meeting a copy of HB 631 that was in front of you. And HB 6... which I left my copy over there. Okay. So HB 631 effectively makes this amendment moot. In fact, it's going to, in my speaking with Councilor Burton prior to the meeting, it's at a state where it's heading, where if it was going to be vetoed, it would have been vetoed already, so it's basically waiting for a rubber stamp signature. So either, you basically have two choices. You could continue this tonight, take an action, and then we would come back and amend it again to meet what HB 631 is doing, or you could effectively send it back to the planning board and let us rework it before you, without taking any action tonight. I think it would save you a lot of time to simply just send it back to the planning board. Sally?
I just wondered if you could just take a moment to explain to people that are here that don't have this in front of them what the...
Right, so 631, first off, it defines commercially zoned land as land for such commercial activities as retail and office space. It then states that notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, municipalities shall allow multifamily residential development on commercially zoned land, provided that adequate infrastructure, including roads, water, and sewage systems, shall be available or provided to support the development. Now, what that effectively means for Durham, with our current zoning, is multifamily residential development would be allowed in any of our non-residential zones. So the only places it wouldn't be potentially allowed would be R, RA, RB, RC, provided that they can demonstrate that they can provide proper sewage and water.
And am I clear what you said is that it would be a repeat, we would be doing this again after the planning board takes it up once the governor passes HB 631?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a suggestion? Representative Howland is here, and he's on that committee. Al, would you give us the situation? Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, it is.
Because Representative Howland's been intimately involved in all of this. And what is
That's
the...
why he looks more tired every time I see it.
What is the situation now?
I was trying to dig through my notes on this. So this did come to the Housing Committee. When it came in, it was a super, super bad bill. I think someone mentioned it was like you got 65 feet for the height, and we kind of whittled away at it. The concept really is that you want mixed use in your commercial zones. It's a good idea. It maximizes your, I'm not supposed to say to half of my car or half of the house, that, it increases the taxes that you get, which helps you control your budget, which is a good thing. So maximizing your commercial zone is there. We went around and it got amended, and they kind of kept making the commercial part of it smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think they were really trying to say that you could do mixed use that you could do multifamily essentially almost anywhere as long as there was a minimal amount of commercial space being used, and as long as that the commercial use was not really incompatible with a multifamily residential setup. So example, like if you had some kind of smelting plant or something on the first floor, it would be kind of bad to have people living above it. So that was it. So it really does, anywhere that you have commercial uses are allowed, now you are going to have to allow multifamily. So to what the chair said, it's kind of a non-negotiable thing. Really what you're trying to do is get yourself in a position. I didn't actually look at the bill right off the top of my head, but they've been 60 days from signing is generally what they say, which gives you almost no time to react. It's already in effect. So there you go. So it's like, I mean, it really is non-negotiable. So it's really to the planning board to work out where you allow commercial uses, because that's going to define multifamily. And I hope that makes sense.
Councilor Grant?
Question. When you said that this says effective date would be July of 2026?
I'm sorry, I misread the year.
Okay, so it would be,
Year.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I just want to make sure that this isn't the one everybody's here to speak on. If that's the case, we should definitely hear everybody.
I don't believe it is, but this is a resolution that a lot of people do have opinions on, but what we're hearing tonight is it needs to be refined based on the passage of a state law that is imminent, and that the planning board is suggesting that it go back to them before we're asked to make a final opinion.
To make sure it comports with the law as it's...
Yes, similar to the resolution that was made earlier, that we are not violating New Hampshire state law by passing a local ordinance that is in violation of that.
Joe,
We will
can I
have an
ask-
opportunity to consider this again.
Could I have ask one more question?
Yes, please.
Of Paul?
Yeah,
Or
Ms.
just in
Rasmussen,
general?
perhaps you and Michael could both come up in case there are further questions. The town planner, Michael Barron, also, in case there are
So-
questions.
I was just, so is the reason why we would want to table it and send it back to the planning board because we would be adding additional multifamily housing in other zones to comply to this? Is that I just want clarification
So-
if that's why we would be doing this.
I had misread, I'm usually reading this on my phone, and the page I read it off of is really bad. I had misread the date. So I thought that this was going to be effectively already be a problem, which is why I wanted to work on it. But yeah, I want to bring it back and so that the planning board submits a version that is consistent with the state law that would be taking effect. I mean, we could do this now ahead of time and then come back with a second version, but then I think it's better because there's two ways we can look at it, right? We might want to take a look at our table of uses and say, well, maybe we don't allow office everywhere, because office space is the one that brings in every other zone. And if there are zones that don't want to have office space, that we don't think office space works, then maybe we can do something that's not quite everything that's non-residential. But that would be a long, drawn-out conversation.
So we also have the split of the CB1 and 2 on here, though, and that's actually fairly necessary to do, would be my other question, even though I didn't sort of put question E in behind that statement, but.
True.
So, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman,
think?
I think we should listen to the citizens of Durham and their concerns about zoning and what it's going to do to us, because we've got so many people here who have an opinion on the future of the town. I'd like to hear what they have to say, and they can still speak to what's on the table.
Yes.
That would be my,
So this is a public hearing. The counselors will have an opportunity to debate this issue after the public hearing, and we ask the counselors listen, maybe ask questions for clarification, and let the public speak. Counselor Friedrichs, do you have something to add that is, do you have something to add?
Yes, I have two questions for our town planner and for Chair Rasmussen. The first is, I noticed that in one of the CB districts, multi-unit residential is listed as a conditional use. So we're understanding that creating or allowing multi-unit residential in commercially zoned districts as a conditional use, but not a by right use, would be complying with the law.
Well, I would want to look carefully at the law if and as adopted. I would think that already by allowing multi-unit residential, mixed use with residential would meet it. I certainly hope it would, because mixed use with residential could have 2 or 3, possibly 4 floors of residential and central business. That is certainly accommodating multi-unit, but it's adapted to the exigencies of a downtown zone where the first floor should be commercial. So I would think that that would meet it. Whether the conditional use for that in CB2 meets it, hopefully also, but we can look at that.
Counselor, I think it's quite clear, actually. It says municipalities shall allow multifamily. So that's by right. There's no conditional use allowed.
Correct.
for the uninitiated and the crowd, we are not a local control state. The towns can only do what the state allows. And sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle that is the situation. And if the state passes a law saying we can't do something, it becomes a state law. We can't change it. We have to work within the state statute. Is that correct?
As far as I know, yes. I mean, you guys, whether you can do whatever you want tonight. It won't bother me one way or the other. You just realize that we'll be back here within the next year with a follow-up.
It makes me angry too, believe me. But sometimes people, in the name of local control, forget that that's not what the state is.
We did? Okay.
My second question for our planner and the chair is whether or not there's been an opportunity yet to discuss this with the historic commission, because a lot of our historic district is zoned for commercial use. And since tear downs are allowed, just the redesign has to be historically approved. Would continuing to zone our historic district as commercial endanger our historic buildings to be torn down and replaced?
Excuse me. This is a public hearing for the public. We'll have an opportunity to talk further about this amendment and ask our questions, but this is an opportunity for the public to speak. So we would like to start the public hearing and not be debating what this ordinance is.
I do want to apologize, but this didn't finish coming out of committee until June 30th. They got it out right under the line, which is why it's so late, me bringing it to you.
Okay. So is the public are welcome to speak? We'd appreciate it if you kept to the 5-minute speaking, and if you think you need to go longer, please say so at the end of your 5 minutes, and you can speak again after everybody else has spoken. So the public hearing is open. Any comments are welcome.
Only on this.
Only on this.
Yes, on this issue. Any comments from the public?
So
Please,
I'm trying to untangle, because you
Right.
have two public hearings that have now melded together. So this is, I'm assuming one of them, which is the mixed, the multifamily, which was in 3 zones that you were going to allow by right, was one of your public hearings. And so when you look at, I'm just going to pull aside from what, those of us in the legislature are doing. If you look at those three zones, actually, there is multifamily and predominantly in each of those three zones. It makes sense. In fact, we changed a lot of the zoning after we allowed it, and so it's now non-conforming. And so I think the reason you should ask yourself, why would you not have multifamily and sewer and water close to town, which is what is pretty standard in practice. And so it's been obviously a fear of student housing, particularly in the neighborhoods around where you had student housing. And so when you look at an opportunity, and of course the market has changed dramatically from when we built all the student housing downtown. Now, if you ask a lot of the building owners, in fact, they're like, they can't guarantee that student housing will in fact pay for their new building. And so I think when you look at like where you would allow multifamily housing if you were going to allow it in Durham, which is kind of a good starting place to bring people into our community, it's those three zones. And if, those who are going to wait till the end where you do your first reading of the lodging houses, it's in those three zones. Those are where it makes sense. And I think a thing that really came up in the legislature when we talked about housing is, does the type of use that you're allowing conform to the neighborhood? And in each of these cases, the answer is yes, it does. And so since you really can't now say we don't want student housing because students are a protected class, you should think about what kind of housing you do need, because when you say no to multifamily everywhere, the collateral damage of that is you say no to a lot of people coming into our community. And so I think it's been that kind of restrictive zoning that has had some really poor consequences to the town. And so I think separated from what the state laws, and again, if you look in what the bill that passed, you do have the ability in that commercial property to say a chunk of that building has to be commercial. So that does give you a little bit of control rather than just a strictly multifamily building that you're going to put in there. But again, if you look in those three zones, what's sitting there, it's exclusively multifamily is what's there. So I think we should be really, really careful about overly restrictive zoning. When we talk about what the legislature is coming down on, that's it. That was a real theme that we heard about restrictive zoning and alleging discrimination occurring. So I think these types of units do fit in these areas, and I think that's why we said it should go forward. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Joshua Meyer with 7 Chesley Drive. So my hearing is not great even with my hearing aids, but I think I'm agreeing with Paul Rasmussen. You can mark that down in the historic calendar. So I think HB 631 changes this discussion, and I think that, well, I guess I would add something that Paul may not agree with, and that was different from what Jay Goose also said. I think this idea to rush in anticipation of this governor signing it, I wonder if it shouldn't be the other way around, where if the governor signs these bills, then we rush to deal with the governor signing it, because we have the if. And the New Hampshire Municipal Association has urged the governor to veto 631, so it's probably a long shot request, but I think it would make more sense to see if it's actually signed, then act quickly to react to that, because if she doesn't sign it or she vetoes it, then there's a whole changing, a lot of other people I think would have things to say. What I would have to say in any case, if it's signed, is what I wrote in the Dear Neighbor update, that if the bill makes this moot, it's signed by the governor, I think we have to look more closely at the buffers from single-family homes from these multi-unit developments, because on Churchill, which I'm most familiar with, the setbacks are only 5 feet and 15 feet, and you can cover 80% of the land with building and parking lot. And you do have a bunch of single-family homes that are on Churchill and also adjacent to Churchill in the RA zone. So I don't know if this is your job or if it's probably more the planning board and the site plan regulations and Michael, our town planner. But I think whatever happens with this, if multi-unit housing is allowed, that we need to be very careful to protect the buffers from single-family homes. That's my main point. So I don't know what you can do about that, but I wanted to make sure I said that on the record. Thank you very much.
Eileen Murphy, 9 Bayview Road, and speaking on behalf of myself as a resident, not on behalf of the Ways Meet Center, I agree with what Al Howland said. Thanks.
So I'm Timothy Horrigan, 7 Faculty Road. I just wanted to clarify some things which I think at least sound a little bit unclear from where I was sitting. The status of the bill HB 631, which does make a significant change to state law that town has to follow. It passed the House not unanimously. There was but by a pretty wide margin, and then it passed the Senate pretty easily. But we don't necessarily know whether it's going to be signed or vetoed by the governor. So she is not finished. I'm quite certain she is not finished deciding which bills she's signing and which she's vetoing it. And so the fact that New Hampshire Municipal Association's against it is, probably something that's going to weigh on her mind. But there's lots of people who are in favor of it. So certainly where the bill stands now, it's not necessarily going to be signed. It may be vetoed, but if she does sign it, or if it does or if a veto is overridden by the House and the Senate, whenever we have the veto day bill, it will take effect July 1st, 2026. So in either case, there is not necessarily a rush to deal with the amendment today if you're worried about HB 631. So there is some time, although I certainly understand the sooner you resolve this, the more time that gives you to move on to the infinite number of other issues that you're dealing with. So that's, I just want to clarify, that's the status of the bill is. It will probably be signed by the governor, but we don't know that for sure. And if it takes effect, it won't be until July 1st, 2026. So that's what I wanted to say, so thanks.
Thanks for that clarification.
Gwendolyn Howard, Bayview Road. Paul, you should have knocked the wind out of somebody's sails. But anyway, so much for preparation. I was here tonight. I think I put a letter, I'll just start at the beginning. I put a letter in your package. Just wanted to ask the counselors, were you able to see that letter?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm here to talk about the part of this ordinance which deals with the multi-unit. And I think it's important that we remember that it says multi-unit and not multifamily, because multifamily sounds one way, but multi-unit sounds different to me. And I know there's students, I live on Bayview, so obviously students have always been a concern, but multi-unit, I think, is different, especially with the proposed lodging. I think that's further down on your agenda, should you want to stay here long enough tonight to deal with it. And also with the elimination of the three unrelated people. So I think that that's something to be very important, because multifamily sounds very, amenable. I'm actually very amenable to it. But 3-story multi-unit, for example, in 2024, just last year, there was a proposal here in Schoolhouse Lane, right, where an owner subdivided his lot and then took the lot that he had created, and he had a proposal for a 4-unit, multi-unit place with parking. And if you take a look at what that proposal entailed, is it entailed working right up to those 10-foot offsets, which abut people all along Old Landing Road, and it covered probably 75 to 80% of the property with the building and parking. So I think it's important that as we go forward, obviously if there's law, we'll have to amend by it, but as we go forward, that we try to do anything that we can to protect the neighboring R, A, B, C, whatever zones that are near the commercial. Yeah, I think, do what you can to protect us, I guess, is all I'd say.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maura Slavin, 10 Burnham Avenue. You guys all know, we all know that we have a very special place in Durham. Several years ago, we did some secretary work for a local landlord, and he was talking about landlords from other college towns asking him, like, what are we doing different in Durham where we can have nice, safe neighborhoods close to campus, because that doesn't happen everywhere. So just cautionary to be aware of unintended consequences to whatever we can come up with. And I know with the state laws, it makes it more difficult. Also, one thing that I think this particular landlord did, and I don't know if this is anything that could be encoded if the multi-unit places did come into being or became a problem, is he hired people to go to just go around to his properties. And if there was any problem, call the police right away. And then if there was a beginning of a party that was getting too loud or getting out of hand, it could get nipped in the bud. So just a few thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay Hughes, 9 Middle Road. I think with the time frame being what it is, it's different from what I was talking about before. This is not 60 days. This is plenty of time for the planning board to look at things. Remember that if a state law is passed, it takes precedence over another law in your town that conflicts with it. Doesn't matter when it is. You can pass a law, but if later the state passes a law, it takes precedence over what you have. So I think this needs to be studied again by the planning board to see what they can do. Maybe it's the way uses are done. They can't control, at least at this time, your table of use of where things are. Who knows what this legislature is going to do next year? You know, they may tell you that every single residential zone can have an apartment building in it. Believe me, if they could do it, they would. So I think this time frame allows the planning board to look at it more carefully. So I would urge you to just let it go back to the planning board. Okay? Thank you.
Bob Russell, 8 Krogan Lane, Durham. I just wanted to point out that the latest issue of the New Hampshire Magazine has a big article about how people in Portsmouth live and how much they like their town. And the biggest complaint that all the people had was the height of all the new buildings that were going up in Portsmouth. And you need to just drive downtown and you'll see these monster buildings here which have dominated the whole landscape and destroyed, according to these people, a lot of the character of Portsmouth. And I would not be happy if that happened here in Durham.
So, excuse me, we have a different public hearing on the height changes. This
You will
one,
have.
It's tonight, but we're not talking about that right now. What we're talking about right now is allowing by right multifamily residential in the adjacent zones to the CBD.
I see, okay.
So you're welcome to speak on your topic, but at the next public hearing, which is tonight.
Which is tonight. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
It is confusing.
So I have a letter here on...
Can you please say your name and...
Carolyn Singer, 5 Woodridge Road. I'm on the Historic District Commission. We have a letter, but it's split between both topics, both hearings. So what would you like me to do?
If you could address this topic, and you can present the letter again at the next topic too, if you like.
Okay, I'm just going to read the letter. It's short. Dear Honorable Durham Town Councilors, greetings. Thank you for all your efforts on behalf of our community. I am writing on behalf of the Durham Historic District and Heritage Commission. We write to you with reservation and opposition to parts of zoning ordinance amendments that are before you for consideration. Specifically, we object to 2 items. One is the change to the table of uses as it pertains to Church Hill District, which is part of the Durham Historic District. Currently, multi-unit housing is not permitted. We believe the ordinance should remain that way. We are in favor of smaller buildings, 2 to 4 units, being permitted in the Church Hill District, but not large-scale multi-unit buildings. We believe we believe allowing these will alter the scale, tone, tenor, and appearance of Church Hill, an essential part of our Durham Historic District. In turn, we believe a change such as this would have adverse effects beyond the boundaries of the historic district. We also object and oppose the proposal to allow 5-story buildings in the central business district and to eliminate the limit of 3 stories in parts of the district along Main Street and Madbury Road. We believe the current limits of 4 stories and 3 stories respectively should remain. Allowing 5-story buildings seems incongruous to the historical growth and development patterns of Durham and will alter the visual and historical landscape and character of our downtown and adjacent areas. We are sympathetic to the need for affordable and worker housing. However, we do not believe this is the way to accomplish that. We did not have the opportunity to review these proposals as they were being developed. And we welcome the opportunity to work with others to address the affordable housing gap while maintaining the historic, cultural, and visual values and characteristics of our community. Thank you for your consideration. Please contact me if you have questions or need more information. Please also enter this letter into the public record for the July 7th, 2025 public hearing on these proposed amendments. Sincerely, Larry Brickner Wood for the Durham Historic District and Heritage Commission.
Thank you.
Nancy Sandberg, 15 Langley Road. I have a statement from the Durham Historic Association, which I'd like to read. To the Durham Town Council, as an organization dedicated to the preservation of the town's history since 1851, we, the Executive Board of the Durham Historic Association, believe that adopting the zoning changes in CB1, CB2, Church Hill, and Courthouse districts will negatively impact the Durham Historic Overlay District. We find that allowing up to 4 and 5 stories in CB1 is drastically out of human scale and incompatible with the scale of historic structures, most of which are 2.5 stories. The board believes that permitting multi-unit residential housing by right takes away many of the controls that protect the historic district by ensuring compatibility and protecting abutting residential zones. In this era of legal and political uncertainty, we urge the town council to table these zoning changes until the citizenry of Durham, through a robust deliberative process, have a much better understanding of the zoning impacts on the historic district. Respectfully submitted, the Durham Historic Association Executive Board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on this ordinance, or this ordinance, excuse me?
Good evening. Good evening, Matt Kamanchak, Thompson Lane, Durham. I have a quick question, and I'm not sure to what extent the CB1, CB2 division has been, is a done deal or is still in the works. I noticed that it's on the agenda for tonight, the sort of the formal, I guess, changing of a table. And so I don't know if those districts have been created formally, officially, or if they're still, if we currently still have just a central business district and are considering the division into two.
At the last meeting, it was voted that there be two central business districts. At this meeting, there is what this public hearing currently that we're in talking about is changing the table of uses to be consistent with that vote of the last meeting to separate the two CBDs.
I see, okay.
As I understand it.
Okay, I think that was my understanding too. And so given that this is still being, let's say, discussed tonight, I wondered if you might consider also turning that back over to the planning board so that they might define with more precision what would go into CB2. Last I understood, CB1 was quite well defined. CB2 was less well defined. My knowledge could be dated on that, but that was my understanding. That's my first point. My second point is I just wanted to sort of speak and echo the comments of the Historic Society. Speak briefly on the importance of conditional use. I think if you listen to the planning board, conditional use has a bad name. Conditional use, I think they may lament the fact that, many of their precious hours were squandered in proceedings that lasted many years and then, were fruitless. And I can understand that frustration, but I also think conditional use, served a purpose. I'm talking about, of course, the Colonial Durham episode. And I think, conditional use is especially important to have at our disposal in case you have a so-called bad actor, right? When you have conditional use prevents a bad actor developer from ramming a bad project down the throats of Durham residents. And if you don't have it, if it's construction by right in the post office, courthouse, Churchill districts, for example, then we lose control. And as people have alluded to tonight, you have a situation where the state is taking away more and more tools in our local toolkit. And so I don't know why we would abdicate and essentially throw away a tool that is likely to help us protect the town in years to come. Thank you.
Any other comments? Would someone like to make a motion to? Nope, you may have another comment.
I'm Malcolm Sandberg, 15 Langley Road. I have quite a lot to say tonight, but I'm going to take you right to the conclusion of what I was going to say. And the key points here is that the bill hasn't been signed. There's a request that it be vetoed. We don't know where it's going to go. We have nearly a year to learn what the true meaning of this new statute is. I tried to find the final version to read online. All I could find was the drafts. Maybe you've all had a chance to read what's before the governor's desk. I have not. And I don't know if the planning board has either. And it would seem to me that it would be wise for this whole package to go back to the planning board and have them consult with legal counsel for the legal counsel to say, this is what this ordinance really means. I heard tonight one person saying, well, we can't do conditional use. Well, a conditional use is not denying the right to develop multi-unit units. Conditional uses are very useful. And if we change this tonight, if you were to just say, oh, make this go away, it's late, I'm tired, I want to go, vote yes. Once you change that little X on the table of uses to a P, there's no going back. You'll never go back from that. It should stay an X. If you were desperate and had to do something tonight, the very maximum you should do is to make it CU. But I think that would be a mistake at this stage. We need guidance from municipal attorneys who specialize in zoning ordinances, so we all know, you all know what we're talking about. Thank you.
Real quick. I'm Sally Tobias, 107 Madbury Road. Of course, I'm part of the group that put all this together. And I just, I know that with the state legislation, I just want to remind you the reasons why we brought this suggestion forward, and that was to increase non-student focused residential units in our downtown area. I did do an extensive amount of outreach to all the communities, the town's committees and commissions, and I had a community at large that was advertised. And the one thing we heard over and over and over again was increased density and increased housing opportunities in our business districts, because it allows for walking and it brings more people into our downtown. So when Todd came and made your request that we create more housing opportunities for the downtown, we of course had to look at our zoning. And the one thing that we looked at was multi-unit in the Churchill and the PO and courthouse, because that's where we have all those multi-units already. Those are the units that we have all over Churchill, all over the PO, and some in C. The reason why we want to make it legal to have multi-unit is that as the tide is changing and property owners are seeing a decline in student rentals, this is a good opportunity to turn those units over, make them better, reuse and adaptive reuse to those older units to turn them into apartments that are more non-student focused and more market-based focused. It would also give the opportunity to create some interesting to-purchase opportunities in that area. Some of the older homes could be converted into condominiums, and it would be that would be a great thing to have. Suddenly that area to be turned over to non-student residents rather than just student housing. The issue with multi-unit, and I get that, multi-family, multi-unit is the same thing, not being allowed is all of those units that are there right now are non-conforming. So any major change to them could conflict with that. So they have to kind of stay within as I'm not mistaken, Michael, they'd have to stay within their inside. They couldn't make any major changes because they would not be allowed to have a multi-unit. So our not allowing multi-unit in areas where we only have multi-unit is locking in the cheaper, low-quality rents that are being rented to students instead of giving us the opportunity to get higher quality non-residents living in those areas. Right now, the building height in those areas is already 3 stories, 30 feet by right, 35 feet by conditional use. None of that is being asked to be changed in those areas. You can have by right a over 55 facility, multi-unit. So you could still have multi-unit, just as big as a regular multi-unit, but it would just be filled with over 55s. It's the same thing. I fear that what the community is trying to get away from is more student housing. That market is declining as we speak. And our opportunity now is to create those opportunities for regular residents non-student residents, upscale housing in our areas that would conform to the districts, the historical district. All of our architectural standards are remaining in place. None of those are being changed. All of the oversight that the historical district has remains in place. None of that is being changed. We're just simply suggesting, whether you do it now or wait, that what is already existing be allowed by right. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments? We have a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
I'll second that.
Any comments on that? Councilor Grant.
Aye.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Racer, aye.
Councilor Lund.
Eric Lund, aye.
Councilor Friedrich.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Thank you, public, and we can now have a discussion about it. It was suggested that this be sent back to the planning board. Would anybody like to make any comments? Councilor Grant.
Yeah, I think that, especially, you just go to what Sally was talking about, is that this change to correct the multi-unit in PO, et cetera, was not made based on being driven by the state. This was based on the discussions about enhancing the ability to create better clusters of housing close to the central business district to help with regenerating, re-energizing our downtown. So I think to actually send it back to the planning board when we have it in front of us today, along with the CB1, CB2 columns, just as a cleanup, I think should be kept. The impact on the other areas are more on the outlying areas that also then allow business uses. So those could be reimagined. There are a lot of the areas that are currently in Orly and other districts, but this is about the core. And this was something that we all wanted and was asked for, and not related to what was being driven in Concord. That's my opinion.
Okay. As part of this, these potential changes, I guess one of my concerns is I'm not hearing a whole lot about attainable housing. And that we're making these changes, but we're not necessarily addressing the problem of making these spaces affordable. So I'm wondering whether we could encourage that, whether floor plans could require that a bedroom to living room space ratio would have to be closer to 50-50, so that you don't put a lot of bedrooms in with a kitchen and not really living space. That could make it more affordable, potentially. Or does a portion of a building become rented so that there is attainable housing? Sometimes that needs to be in maybe larger buildings, but my own daughter out in Seattle spent time in a rental space where it was essentially subsidized. She did not have to pay the rent everyone else was paying because she didn't qualify with her current income. And whether there could also be the suggestion to developers that when they do build, if they choose to build units, as many of them are with multiple beds, really what we would call student housing by their design, whether they need to use designs that are adaptable to being turned into family residence, family apartments, rather than student, as what we think of. Sally's giving me a signal.
They can only build 2 bedrooms now.
Yeah, so if you build 2 bedrooms, let's have 2 bedrooms and a living space. Yes. So, anyways, some thoughts that I didn't see anywhere in what we've looked at, and maybe that's because they come later, but I feel like if we don't intentionally look for ways to make the housing attainable now, I'm not sure it will be part of the plan ultimately. Thanks.
Councilor Friedrichs.
Councillor Friedrichs?
Thank you. So I want to start by clarifying that I am in favor of increased density downtown, and I am very much in favor of additional affordable opportunities in Durham. I think what this ordinance language does as written is it does not achieve those things necessarily. And I also have concerns that there is a way to write the zoning ordinance so that we take into consideration our historic properties. And this language as written does not do that. I know we can't save every historic building, but there is something really special about beams that are hand-hewed and that are, from tree wisps that no longer exist. And we've lost a lot of those properties already. And so taking into account how zoning will affect those properties and the continued viability of those properties is really something that I would value hearing from the Historic Commission and from the Historic Association. I also think the point about affordability is really crucial that, and this is something that I've run through, I have a sibling that works as an urban planner, and so I brought this issue to his firm, and they do affordable housing work in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts. And I've also talked with a couple of other New Hampshire planners and architects. And the way to get the sort of housing that we want to see, which is workforce professional housing, is not to open up by right to whatever will make the most profit, but rather to allow density bonuses for the type of project that we really hope to see in this town. And so I could see allowing for options that particularly do affordable housing, and to look at how we could open up zoning for those sorts of projects on a density basis, whether that is multi-unit, like the workforce overlay district that we worked on for the rural zone in Orly, or one that also looks at building size, setbacks, things like that, while keeping in mind our historic characteristics. And so I am in favor of the underlying premise of density and affordability, but I think we really need to look at whether does the zoning language as written actually achieve that, and in a way that continues to honor and acknowledge the other goals in Durham. And I've personally come to learn that while sometimes the pace of government moves frustratingly slow, building consensus is how you really get great government. And it's an important part of the political process to make sure that everyone is in support of and sees credibility in local government. And I think that that's been lacking at this point in terms of the specific language. So those are my thoughts.
You may have missed it in the public hearing, but both the Historic Commission and the Historic Association and the Historic District Commission were both opposed to these amendments, and stated so for the record.
I was going to say one thing. I did look at the email that had come about concerns about the Churchill District in particular. And this is a question for the planning board and maybe our town planner. And that is, when you look at Churchill, those buildings that are right along Main Street, I guess those will be lodging houses, or however you term them, or whatever. They're, multi-unit. And I think the concern may be that you're going to have that same kind of housing right up against the Chesley Drive or Mill Pond Road, where that district comes up against really faculty neighborhood. And my question to the planning board is, can you take an area like Churchill and say, in this section, we welcome this kind of buildings, in the section that abuts neighborhoods, that we would not use the same standards and would try to reduce the potentially the number of lodging houses or multi-unit use? Can you do that within one district, divided up so that Churchill development is one kind in one place, and allows for something different along, in this example, Chesley and Mill Pond, so that you allow for transition between the lodging houses or the multi-unit locations and the faculty neighborhood.
Well, you have to have the same standards throughout one zoning district. You can have some distinctions as long as they're very precise and you have a good reason. And we have a very good example of that already, which pertains to the next item, on the next public hearing on the agenda, about the 3-story height limit.
Right.
So there you have one zone, Central Business 1, and a little bit less than half of that. It's all one zone, but you have one section that's limited to 3 stories, and the rest of it is 4 or 5 stories by conditional use. That's legal, it's rational, it's all one district, but there's a reason why that distinction was made, and it's very cogent. But, so if you're going to have distinctions within one zoning district, they have to be very precise and clear, no judgment allowed, and it has to be precise and clear.
Sure. I think in this case, you do have properties that abut homes, so there's something to think about whether.
Well, you could have something that within, this particular zoning district, you could have language where development within this zoning district abuts a single-family home, there shall be an additional, 30-foot setback. That's a general rule that would apply throughout the district, but it would pertain to certain sites. So you could certainly do that.
Okay.
Any other comments? Councilor Burden?
I don't think I can vote for this motion until we go back, like we usually do in Durham, and involve the Historical Society and the Historical Association. And because once you make this change, it's forever. And I would have to vote against the motion as it's written now, but could we refer it back to them so we can get, they have a chance?
I don't think there's a motion on the table right now. I think there's just a discussion going on, as I understand it.
Okay, well, I'm opposed to the motion right now.
There's no motion, but you're opposed to the concept.
I oppose it when it comes forward.
Okay. Councilor Friedrichs, is your hand up? Any other council
Just
register?
one quick question. Mr. Barrett, do we have a transferable development rights program in Durham?
No.
Okay. The reason I asked the question is because I realized I didn't understand some of the tactics that we could use in the zoning, and Councilor Friedrichs mentioned density bonuses, and as I'm looking up on here, they mentioned transferable development rights as one of the ways, and we have a significant amount of conservation and residential, rural area that we desire to prevent construction and development on. And if, as I'm reading a 5-second non-educated spiel on the Google machine here, it's saying that folks that own that property can sell their right to develop on that property, and then developers could purchase that right, and in an area we designated, not in the rural and not in conservation, but in the CB1, CB2, and the Churchill area, they could purchase those development rights as a way of getting exceptional privilege with the development for density increasing for homes. I obviously don't have any clue what I'm talking about outside of reading here, but I'm wondering if that's something worth interrogating.
No.
Okay.
No, in a word. Absolutely not.
Council Register, that exists in Dover, and it's controversial, and it's not on the table right now, and it would require a lot of public comment.
Understood.
Yeah. Dover has a program. I think they're the only community in New Hampshire, and I applaud Dover. It's very complex. I believe it's been successful in Dover, but there's not nearly enough development in Durham. It'll never happen here. I can assure you that.
Thank you.
Would anybody like to make a motion about after this public hearing?
I guess, what do we what are we saying? So I think we were talking about, we were going to discuss this. Is this something that we were going to actually move on tonight, or we were going to do it the next meeting? So are we just going to vote to say whether we want to take it back to the planning board and keep it here, and then vote to analyze whether we want to approve it or not? So these are the,
I think there are
this is the
multiple
question.
things that could happen. What you suggest, that we could send it back to the planning board is one. Two, we could extend our time to make a decision to another time. Or three, we could vote on this. Is there another option that people see?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the ordinance as written.
Second. Is there a second? Is there further discussion about the ordinance? Now you can...
I already did.
I'd like to propose an
I think
amendment to the ordinance.
I think it's bad process. We spent $2.5 million pulling a dam, and we made sure everybody had a chance to weigh in on that. To make this kind of a change to their zoning ordinance on a one-time basis without having the historic people involved at all, or very little until the end, is not a good way for us to make a decision, and I'm opposed to the ordinance now.
So just,
Councillor Lund, did you want to say something?
Oh, yes, yes. I wanted to say that I don't think we should approve this tonight, because one of the uncertainties we have is whether the New Hampshire state bill to expand where we would be required to have the lodging houses is a sufficient uncertainty that we want to wait until we know that before we adopt whichever version of this ordinance we choose to adopt. And I would leave it to the discretion of the town council whether we voice our approval at our next meeting in August, or whether we would refer it to the planning board and have them refine it further.
Thank you.
But I do not think we should approve this ordinance tonight.
Councillor Friedrichs?
I was going to propose an amendment to strike in the ordinance in the title to change it so that we are voting on only separating CB1 and CB2 in the tables tonight. Strike all of the whereases. And then therefore, and leave only the now therefore to change the table of dimensions to separate CB1 and CB2. So that would be to strike the multi-unit residential entirely from the resolution tonight, and to pass just the CB1 and CB2 tables change. And therefore it would be an ordinance where there are no whereases, because all of the whereases address the multi-unit change. I wonder if anyone would like to second that motion, or perhaps, I'm not sure if a motion would have to be withdrawn first. My apologies.
so just as a comment about the historic, you're worried about the fact that the Historic Commission didn't get enough feedback, is that correct? Or time for that?
They weren't consulted, apparently.
Okay, so I just they stated that multi-unit housing isn't allowed in those areas. And actually, multi-unit housing, except for the fact that it has to be over 55, is allowed in Churchill, and PO, and Courthouse. Multi-unit is already allowed. All we're trying to do is be able to have people that are maybe 30-something be able to also have the opportunity to live in those districts. So it has always been there.
I believe there are new regulations in this state that wherever you allow over 55, you must now allow workforce housing as well.
That is also correct.
So
I think that just changing it to the multi-unit, I think the ideas that Sally came up with are good, that we should be looking more about how we regulate some of those areas. We've already come up with a couple of the overlay districts, but just in general, this is very clean. There's not a lot of the things that we would be talking about in terms of regulating the change of, adding workforce housing. Those would actually be in a different area than what this is. This is literally just changing the table of uses to clean up that one area and the CB1 and CB2. So I think just changing it to take out senior housing multi-unit and just saying it's multi-unit is, especially when we consider the fact that all those areas already have it and happen to have students in most of it. I just don't see it's a real cause to actually not move forward as is.
I would agree with M that separating CB1, CB2 sounds fine to me. I think without being comfortable with how the housing will be designated, in terms of obtainable or not, that kind of thing, I'd rather wait for PO, CH, and C zones at this time. But I'm not sure that that's what's on the table right now, but just voicing my opinion.
We still need a second for M's amendment.
Yes. I would second M's amendment.
And to be clear, this amendment is saying that, do I understand that this amendment is separating the change in table dimensions for the separation of CBD1 and CBD2 and not moving forward on the allowing by right the multifamily residential in these zones? Is that what the amendment is?
Correct. And I believe that the resolution then would essentially need to strike all of the whereas language, because all of the whereas language addresses the multi-unit change. I don't believe, I was just quickly glancing at it, but I don't think any of the whereas language addresses the CB1, CB2 change.
Except for the last one.
Except for the now therefore, correct.
No, the last whereas.
Oh.
Just a finding of fact.
Would this council be comfortable in sending the whole thing back to the planning board and asking them to separate these two issues into two separate votes and two separate issues? It seems that the planning board has some issues with the state law. Nobody seems to have a lot of issue with the clarification of the CBD1 and CBD2. But right now, we don't have clear, to me, there's no clear thing that we would actually be voting on here. How do we vote for half of a bill?
This might be helpful to clarify, Mr. Chair, for everybody. The CB2, 1 and 2 was to allow CBD1 to have a higher roof line and then CB2. And so we wouldn't have to have the same zoning for both areas. And that was pretty, seemed to make sense.
And that was passed.
That was, we didn't, well, we did the separation. We did, the other issue of how high the building should be is a separate issue. I have to say something because I'm old. Prior to the change in the town governance, we are the only town that has this form of governance. If we hadn't changed the form of government, zoning issues would be put to the plebiscite. They'd be put on the ballot at a town meeting and voted on by the whole town. And so that's why when there was an issue about the dam, we did it that way. And so everybody got to know what was going on, what they were voting for, and it became a community decision. We are one of the only towns in New Hampshire that vests the legislative function in a town council. It was done in the name of efficiency, but we knew it was at the cost of participation. And I think this is an instance where we should involve the entire town by letting them vote on significant voting changes that zoning changes that will change the nature of our town, both on this one and the next one. That is my opinion. And if you have to wait for a special election to do it, then we should. But then everybody gets a chance to vote. Everybody gets a chance to know what's going on. And I think this is an instance where our current governance structure doesn't lend itself well to that. And that's my opinion.
Do we have an actual, in the amendment that's made, again, do we have how it would read? Has it been written? Has it been suggested? And perhaps someone could help me with the process of how this could be further amended to send it back to the planning board to separate these issues?
Well, right now, we have an amendment on the floor. We should probably deal with that first.
And I'm trying to deal with that, and I don't understand what that amendment actually is.
Okay, well,
I think we can just abbreviate what we were starting with.
yeah, the amendment is to remove and to permit by right multi-unit residential in the POC, H&C zoning districts.
Yeah,
That's all it
just
is.
eliminating that second half of the sentence there.
Okay.
That's the amendment.
Do people
That's the
understand that?
amendment.
Does everyone on the council understand what they're voting on then, on the amendment, which is?
I believe so.
So it's just going to, the sentence will just stop here. To separate CB1 and CB in the tables. That's all we're doing is separating CB1 and CB2 in the tables.
That's the amendment.
That's the amendment.
This is the amendment to pass, to the motion to pass the entire
Right.
amendment.
So
Okay.
we're only separating CB2 and
There-
If the
1 and 2.
amendment, if we're voting on the amendment.
If we're voting on
We're
the,
voting on an amendment to do that.
Okay, that's it.
Wait,
This
that's
doesn't
it.
change anything
all
else.
right, are we ready for a vote?
Right, so, Mr. Chair, so, right, I mean, you said there's no problem doing this. I would just suggest, if that's the pleasure of the council, you are adopting the one change about the CB1 and CB2, which is strictly formatting. I would simply, and we can just revise the whereases so that it's clean. You would just want to add one whereas CB1 and CB2 are separated for formatting purposes. Just one clear whereas will be sufficient. And then you can send...
Excuse me 1 second, did you get that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
and we'll just revise that, it's all non-substantive, the ordinance form. And then if it's your pleasure, you can send the substantive amendment about the multi-unit residential back to the planning board to look at further with any kind of direction you wish to give them.
Thank you. So we'd like to now take a vote on ending on the amendment, which would end the ordinance 2025-07 at the word tables in our packet. Councilor Grant.
Nay.
Robin vote nay.
What, go right to here.
Nay.
Two nays. I'm voting to end the ordinance with, at the word tables.
Curtis Racer, nay.
Darrell Ford, nay.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sign Adele, aye.
Councilor Lund? Councilor Lund?
Councilor Lund.
He's frozen. Is the Zoom frozen? Eric?
No, but Andrew.
Okay. Councilor Friedrichs?
Appears to be yes.
M. Friedrichs, aye. I don't know if Councillor Lund is now able to communicate.
Joe Friedman, nay.
So I believe Lund said,
Councilor Lund, what was your vote?
My vote was aye,
Yeah, thank you.
so,
but I believe the nays have it.
yep. 6 nays, 3 ayes.
So the motion on the floor is to pass these amendments that Councilor Grant made and was seconded.
No.
No.
No, we only
Let's
had
just
3
vote.
yeses, 6 noes.
That was on the
This is on
amendment.
the amendment.
Oh, on the amendment. I'm
Now
sorry.
we're on the Councilor Grant's original motion to pass what's in front of us.
Right.
Councilor Register.
Aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
We're now voting for
The original,
As-
The original motion.
With the second sentence.
no changes.
no.
Sign Adele, nay.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin vote aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Counselor Friedrichs?
Eric Lund, nay.
M. Friedrichs, nay.
5 to 4.
5 to 4 which?
To approve as written.
The motion carries.
Good deal.
Motion passes.
You did.
Yes.
Yes. I believe you voted yes.
Moving on.
No, we voted no.
Did you? I voted no also.
Yeah, I voted no.
9C from our agenda.
Public
The
hearing.
possible public hearing for changing the 3-story height limit.
Would you like me to read the motion?
Yes, please.
I move the Durham Town Council does hereby open the public hearing on ordinance 2025-08, amending Chapter 175 zoning, Article 12, base zoning districts, Section 175-42, Central Business District, and Article 12.1, use and dimensional standards, Section 175-54, table of dimensions, to eliminate the 3-story height limit for CB1 zoning district and to change the standard for commercial and 5-story buildings in CB1 district from requiring 2 floors to requiring only 1 floor.
Seconded.
Second. Is there a discussion about opening a public hearing or not, or we just vote?
We just vote.
Just vote. Counselor Grant.
Aye.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Signed, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Reister, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Thank you. So public hearing is now open. We'd like to hear from the public on these ordinances.
Councilor Friedrichs?
Beth Olshansky, Packers Falls Road. I was going to give my presentation, but it's so long and all these kind people have been waiting to speak, and so I'd like permission to wait and give it next time, asking you if you would keep the public hearing open, because I'd rather give all these people a chance to speak.
Yes, and I might remind you of the time, I might remind the council of the time. We do want to finish the agenda, so we may have to cut the public hearing short tonight and continue it to the next meeting. So I think we can give this until 10:15. We still have other business to conduct. At 10:15, we will probably continue that public hearing. And Ms. Olshansky, you'll be able to make that presentation at the next one if that's what happens. So if anybody would like to make further...
I just wanted to clarify, if we keep the public hearing open, this ordinance is in effect as written. Is that true?
No, the public hearing has been noticed, and you can keep the hearing open as long as you wish. It only means that if we were to get an application now, while this proposed ordinance is pending, an applicant would have to meet the current language and the proposed language. But once you take your final action, then that will be the ordinance that's in effect.
Right,
So
right.
there's no problem continuing the hearing, if that's your pleasure, yeah.
I'm not sure that's a good thing.
Hello, my name is Mary Alice Schatzel. I live at 5 Bayview Road. I think that allowing by right 4 or 5-story buildings is not coherent with the town of Durham. I mean, you can see what's happened in the city of Portsmouth when they've allowed things that large. And so I think allowing by right that many stories will forever change the characteristic of our town. And I personally am not at all supportive of that. Thank you for listening to me.
Hi, good evening. Roger Hayden. I'm a property owner, 44 and 46 Main Street, Hayden Sports in the Durham Launder Center. I'm in favor of changing some of the zoning outlined here in this 2025-08 offer. I've been in town since 1988 on Main Street. and made my living here. Wife worked at the University of New Hampshire. And I can tell you that back when the business started, it was thriving. There were a lot of other stores. Stuart Shands was in town. We had 2 hardware stores, a number of other things. And it's very unfortunate. I can tell you right now, the commercial business district downtown is dead. There's no other way to put it, it's dead. The shopping is very limited. There's very little support for it. I know the infrastructure, I know Todd and the Department of Public Works has done a terrific job making it look pretty and efficient. But the ability for businesses to come into this town is almost impossible. I've had to lower my rents. I have space that is unrented. The businesses that I've talked to, maybe 5 or 6 that I've known for years and years, my business is down 30% this year alone. I know we went through COVID and a number of other things, but I was doing, when I started my business in the basement of Durham House of Pizza, 900 square feet. In 1999 and 2000, I was doing $1 million in business out of that space. Website, selling university clothing, and the town was vibrant. Now, Rite Aid is left, no hardware stores. Does anybody remember the Main Street Development Program by the federal government to help save downtown America? 4 facets that you need: grocery store, drugstore, laundry services, and hardware store. Very quickly, right now, we're down to 2. I've got one of them, the Laundry Center, which is failing. When I bought that 15 years ago, it was doing close to $100,000. I'm not going to make $60,000 in gross sales this year alone. The store is down. Other landlords I've talked to, some of these changes that you offer here, maybe going up to 4 and 5 story, whether it's by right or conditional use. You want family housing downtown to get a mix in? That's great. You're not going to have one family move into downtown Durham unless their apartment comes with a parking space. And that's just a minimum of 1. Durham, I live in Dover. The units that are being built up there, I understand they're more expensive. They're multi-story. They all have parking with them. So I hate to throw the cog in the works here. You could change it and make it 10-story buildings. If you don't have parking, you're not going to change the mix of residents that are downtown. It's just not going to happen. And you're not going to get other businesses coming into town, because it's not that the rents are so expensive. It's just the number of people downtown don't exist. I look at you all here. I mean, I've known Wayne for years and years. When was the last time any of you went downtown to go shopping?
Since I stopped playing squash and breaking my rackets.
I remember supporting you there. I used to carry an extra 4 or 5 dozen just for Wayne. But that's because I carried a variety of things. I've tried to carry Oyster River clothing. Oh, it's too expensive. It's the same price as the University of New Hampshire clothing. But the number of people coming down you're below a tipping point right now. And I've been to the stores downtown. I try to shop at some places. M&L's is a few places. I buy my wife a few things there. Why aren't they open now? Durham House of Pizza is closed for 2 weeks. I'm considering closing for maybe 2 weeks in July alone, just because there's no traffic. So I support making some changes, and I think you're going to have to save the downtown business district. That's what it is, a commercial district.
Can I ask you a question, Roger?
Yes.
And I'm breaking my own rule here. The epicenter of Durham was Dick Houghton's hardware store. But you
Right.
could get a necktie at Stewart and Shane's. You could do all that stuff. I don't see raising the height of buildings as a cure for what the malls did when they opened up, and that's when retail started to die in the little towns. And it's dying now because people are buying online. No heights are going to change the forces in merchandising that are now in place. Or am I wrong? Are we going back to small towns with various stores, or are people going to buy more online and at malls and so forth? It's not your fault.
Excellent point, Wayne. However, Libby's, when Libby's burnt in 1999, it was rebuilt at $110 a square foot. I got a quote on my property 3 years ago from an architect that maxed out my almost 12,000 square feet according to zoning regulations the way they are now, 3 stories. And it would be $400 a square foot. And if it was built, I'd end up, when it's all said and done, I'd be the full-time manager for the property, and I would have had a net profit of $25,000. Doesn't work that way. Anyway.
We welcome you to come back, and we'd like to continue with the public's comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good long evening. I am Judith Spang. I am from Wiswall Road in Durham, and I'm speaking to you tonight as an individual who has served on the Durham Housing Task Force since 2023. I've also been a land use and community development professional. I co-authored the housing section of the Laconia Master Plan, and I've specialized in municipal economic development. In my 42 years in Durham, I've served on a lot of town and state boards and ad hoc groups, including several master plan committees, and I'm now, as I said, on the Housing Task Force. I've had concerns about the lack of a serious deliberation by either the housing or the downtown task forces on this proposal to eliminate this 3-story restrictions. This is no surprise to the Housing Task Force. I've spoken at length about this. I've also been outspoken about the lack of a public vetting process of this significant change. My greater concern is the lack of a comprehensive planning process in bringing this zoning change to the town council. The recordings of the 217 meeting shows only an inconclusive discussion of increasing the building heights to 4- and 5-story buildings along Main Street and Madbury Road. It took all of 3 to 4 minutes. There was no discussion about how it might align with our master plan, our architectural design standards, nor was there a conclusive vote by the handful of downtown subcommittee members to send the proposal to the town council. So what's been the result? The whole proposal has slipped from the Housing Task Force through the town council and the planning board based on no data and only scant public input. So where's the analysis of the impact on traffic and the parking downtown? We've heard about the inadequacy of infrastructure for handling Jenkins Court. How do we know that an indeterminate number of additional housing units will revitalize our downtown and the profitability of Main Street businesses? Will the extra story create affordable housing for our town fire, police, and other employees? How do we know it won't just become more student housing? We don't. Many residents, and in fact the Housing Task Force, share the concern that Durham's housing and taxes are becoming too expensive for even middle-income families. However, more residential units can't be assumed to provide a net financial benefit to the town budget without an economic analysis. We need to know how it is going to balance against the increase in municipal expenses. The council communication implies that the Housing Task Force studied and endorsed eliminating the 3-story limit, but that's not true. That idea originated from the Downtown Subcommittee and was not adopted by the Housing Task Force. The Housing Task Force only recommended a greater density of the downtown residential units for the reasons that we've all identified. And it has explicitly left it to the Planning Board and the Town Council to determine how to achieve this. Our February 17th meeting concluded with, well, we need to tweak this. 35 feet, 45 feet, 60 feet. In an email to me, Mike Barrett writes, actually, there wasn't a vote or a definitive statement of endorsement. Our current master plan resulted from months and months of study and deliberation and a strong public process involving a large number of residents, a lot of them here, I expect, who had varying perspectives. Its basic tenets were strongly supported in the face of the development proposals that we saw for the plaza. Our master plan should be a touchstone for all major projects until we create a new one. Like the Mill Plaza redevelopment plan, this proposal ignores the public desires embodied in the master plan with no tangible justification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail Kelly, 11 Garrish Drive. I'm so glad that the previous two speakers said what they did. As much as I respect the expertise of all of you around this table and all the people in this room, there is not a single person here who has expertise in downtown revitalization. The whole idea that if you build it, they will come has been disproven in this town. Doug Clark did that for us. He had an excellent restaurant in downtown, a restaurant for grown-ups. And I wrote a review of it. It went online, and I was invited to publish that because the whole concept of Durham to the greater public in this region is that it's a town for students. You can get all the beer and pizza and burgers you want in Durham, but come on, serious restaurant fare? No. And that's why he failed. He could not get people in there. Despite having a really fine atmosphere, fine menu, fine wines, a great lively bar, but the concept, even among people in this town, is that you can't get good food in downtown Durham. So I agree with both of the previous speakers that the idea of playing around with the zoning, playing around with heights of buildings is not the way to go about revitalizing your downtown. It's going to take a long process. And I learned this years ago when I was working for the Forum on New Hampshire's Future, when downtowns were dying because malls were coming in. And in the meantime, residential housing was booming. New Hampshire was the fastest growing state east of the Mississippi. Planning boards were just inundated. They didn't know what to do with this because there were no master plans. And so the Forum on New Hampshire's Future brought together people from all parts of the spectrum. There were newspaper publishers. The union leader did not participate. But newspaper publishers from western part of the state, the Keene Sentinel, the Claremont Eagle, Foster's Daily Democrat didn't participate either. But there were businessmen. There were people who headed large corporations and who were having trouble bringing in employees because particularly middle-level managers, because they got here and there were no services in New Hampshire. No public transportation. And so we put together conferences, and I put together the newsletter that the forum produced every month, and it was sent out to every planning board and town council and board of selectmen in the state on how to adopt and put together a master plan. And at that time, and this was in the early 80s, very few towns had master plans. Manchester had one, but Londonderry didn't. And the growth in Londonderry was just out of sight. And they didn't have the services to support it. And then it came to the matter of revitalizing downtowns, because businesses were going out of business. And so the forum put together a conference, an all-day conference, on how to revitalize your downtown. And they brought in an expert. And I think probably Mr. Ford and Mr. Burton have heard this name. His name was Russell Thibault. He founded his own firm in Laconia. Actually, I got to know him in the summer between my senior year of high school at Oyster River and my freshman year at UNH. We were both in the summer youth music school, and he was a fabulous clarinetist. Dated one of my sisters. And then we were both in the UNH symphonic band and in the UNH marching band. And he was here for only a couple years and had gotten engaged and realized that a life as a musician was not going to support a family.
Ms. Kelly, if you want to continue, perhaps you could continue after others have had a chance to speak.
Well, I really want people to know that there are experts out there, and the way to go about this is not within a few hours in a public meeting. It's going to take months. It's going to take years. But it's better to do it right than to do it wrong. You will regret it. Unfortunately, Russell Thibault died 2 months ago. So we don't have that expertise, but there are others out there.
If you'd like to come back afterwards, you could.
Getting late. Hi. Dick Gottschneider. I live on 280 Durham Point Road with my wife who's here. I'm opposed to the height limit, but I am in favor of development in a proper, well-thought-out way. I came to Durham in 1962. I left, and when I graduated to go in the Army, I came back in 1977. I've been here ever since. I was in a very similar business to Russell Thibault. I knew him well. I was a city planner, urban planner, real estate consultant. Russell tended to work primarily in New Hampshire. I ended up working all over the country. I did do the master plan for downtown Concord, for downtown Exeter. I worked on a lot of the projects in Portsmouth, Amesbury, Newburyport, all around the country. I had a fairly large firm. I was also a landlord in Durham for 30 years. I worked on the last master plan that was prepared, and I also worked on the zoning ordinance. This is my home. I've been here a long time. I've watched a lot of change. A lot of what... You left. You left. Roger left. But a lot of what he said is true. The downtown is dying. Adding more students to the downtown is not going to solve our problem. In the last 15 years, we added approximately 1,100 beds of student housing downtown, and the downtown is worse off, not because of the students, but the students didn't help necessarily. I mean, Amazon, which Roger talked about, changing consumer patterns, downtowns are struggling everywhere. I think the idea that someone just referenced, bringing in some expertise from elsewhere, getting some ideas about how to add density into the downtown in a way that's not obnoxious, that actually brings some adults into the downtown to spend money. If you think about Portsmouth, when I first came here, it was a Navy port of call. There were literally houses of ill repute in downtown Portsmouth. Look at it today. $1 million, $2 million, $5 million condos. But what turned Portsmouth around was Strawberry Bank, Theater by the Sea, and 2 other theaters, the arts that turned it around. Exeter got turned around by the river and the redevelopment of the riverfront. Concord got turned around by the Capitol Center for the Arts, etc. There are other innovative ways that Durham can use. So I applaud the idea of trying to do something. I'm opposed, and I think it's a really poor idea to try to do 4- and 5-story buildings on Main Street. It's not going to solve our problem. I don't believe it's economically feasible anyways. Construction costs today exceed $600 a square foot at a minimum. Let's hire somebody, get some ideas. How do we, in our built-up core, how do we add some stuff that we're missing? And there's plenty of examples in other communities that have been successful. That's my recommendation, that we pass on this idea, but I applaud the idea of trying to move forward and bring new investment, and I just don't think this is the right way to do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have one more, and then we're going to probably have to vote to continue this. Do we have one more? Anybody?
Good evening. My name is Nell Neal. I live on Riverview Road in Durham. There's a lot of expertise here. People have spoken who have been in the government, on commissions, on committees. I don't have that. I'm a retired first grade teacher. But I live here. I care about this town. And I just would like to give a regular resident's viewpoint. I agree that we need a broader tax base. I agree with you that some of our downtown buildings are very old and very tired. And I agree that a revitalization of our downtown is needed. I'm in favor of breathing new life into Main Street. I'm not a person who's against change, but I'm worried. This is what I'm worried about. We already have a few of the proposed 4- to 5-story buildings in town with commercial enterprises on the 1st or 2nd floors and with apartments above. So we know what they look like. They look like big boxes. I'm worried that by bringing these zoning changes, our Main Street will look like a big wall of 4- to 5-story boxes. I would like Durham, Main Street to have character. Dare I say, I would like it to have charm. Yes, we have design standards, but are they up to creating a downtown with character? That's an important question. I'm also worried that the commercial enterprises that would come into the first floors
would not be geared to Durham's tax-paying property owners, to the grown-ups like me. So far, few of them do. There's very little that brings me downtown. It's basically the post office, the bank, the grocery store, which is primarily geared to students. I don't go there very often. And I used to go to the drugstore. I do like the Freedom Cafe, though. But that's about it. So those are the things that concern me. Out of that concern has grown some questions. I don't think you answer questions in a public hearing, but I'm going to ask them anyway. Perhaps they've already been answered. And I'm a fairly involved resident in town. I chair a committee in this town, but I don't know the answers to these questions that I have. I would guess that there are many residents who don't even know what's being proposed. These are potentially very big changes. I would hope that this process could be slowed down so that a large segment of the population could be made more aware, and these questions could, or any questions could be answered. So here are my questions. Have you considered other solutions to our tax base problem? And if you have, what are they? And why were they rejected? Have you sought out developers and asked them what's keeping them from developing right now? Have you asked them if these zoning changes will bring them on board? Are you addressing parking in these proposed changes? Do you know what the tax revenue will be and the impact it will have on property taxes? Do you know there's something called a gateway district that allows for development that maintains a green corridor? Are you working on proposals for increasing the tax base outside of downtown? I'm going to close with one more thought. We've seen these 4- and 5-story buildings that you're proposing to bring downtown, and we know what they've brought to us, and we know what they look like. A gym that I used to belong to had a poster on the wall that said, "If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten." And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen in downtown Durham. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we're going to deal with the fact that we're running out of time. So what is the best way to deal with this? Is it going to have a recommendation in terms of...
Just a vote to continue the public hearing.
Vote to continue it? Is that a motion that can be made? Someone
Yes,
wanna
I make a motion to continue the public hearing on August 4th.
Is there a second to that?
I second that.
Is there any discussion on that? Let's go ahead and vote on that.
Aye.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Counselor Lund, to continue the public hearing to August 4th?
Aye.
Counselor Friedrichs?
M. Friedrichs, nay. I prefer to finish it tonight, or at least everyone who's there tonight.
Sure. But the ayes have it. And in terms of the rest of our time here, can we have a brief discussion?
Should you tell them?
Yes,
Make
so
sure
the
they know.
public hearing will be continued to August 4th, and we welcome all of your comments again on August 4th if you can make it here.
Thank you very much for your time and your comments.
Yes.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We will have a significant conversation about those comments as well.
Is there another?
What do we think? There's a number of items. There's our roundtable, there's appointment to be made, there's minutes. Do we push, how much do we push off?
May I make a
Mr. Goose has
suggestion?
asked that there be a first reading, which,
My suggestion is that we omit the roundtable tonight, pick it up next meeting, August 4th, get through the appointment, the approval of the minutes.
and how do we feel about the lodging? Excuse me, could you take your
could you please leave
conversation out in the
quietly?
hall? We're trying to finish up our meeting. Thank you.
Jesus.
Good, Marshal Williams.
So how do we feel about the lodging house and getting that as a first reading? Is that just,
I think we need to postpone the lodging house until August.
jamming it.
I couldn't hear what
I
Em
concur.
said.
What's that?
I didn't hear what Council.
She said postpone the lodging house discussion until August 4th, which I would agree with as well.
Does anybody
Yeah, I'm
else
fine
have
with
a
that,
feeling
too.
about that? All right, so in our time then, we're going to talk about the appointment and the minutes. Okay.
Want me to go?
Yes.
I move that Durham Town Council does hereby nominate resident Dick Lord, 85 Bennett Road, for a 3-year reappointment by the New Hampshire DES Commissioner as a Durham representative to the Lamprey River Advisory Committee.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Counselor
Curtis Register, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Robin vote aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
Counselor Friedrichs?
Eric Lund, aye.
Yep, sorry.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Yes. And thank you to Mr. Lord for his excellent service all along, and we appreciate his signing up to continue to do this work.
Okay, want me to do the next one?
Yes, please.
I move the Durham Town Council does hereby approve the Town Council meeting minutes for June 16, 2025 as presented.
I'll second that.
Second.
Any discussion? Counselor Grant?
Heather Grant, aye.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Register, aye.
Eric Lund, abstain, not present.
M. Friedrichs, abstain. I was blocked from attending since I was out of country.
Okay.
Did we let them know? Or we're not discussing lodging, is that correct?
So the lodging amendment, we don't believe we have time to finish. And
Do we need a motion to leave? Or do we just carry it forward?
I'm sorry?
Do we need a motion to put it on, or do we just carry it forward?
Oh, he wants us really
what's that?
Jay wants us to do it really, really bad.
Well, we talked about why it's so,
Yeah.
and put it off, you're going to be sorry. Ask Al Holland. You can look at 10-minute run.
I make a motion to extend the meeting to 10:45 hours.
Second that.
Counselor Grant?
What?
To extend, the motion to extend the meeting to 10:45.
Aye.
Is there a conversation about this or not? No, it's just a...
If Jay can stay awake this long, I can, so. You
So
trained
Heather
me
Grant,
well.
aye.
Robin vote aye.
Reluctantly, Joe Friedman, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, nay.
Curtis Register, aye.
Eric Lund, nay.
M. Friedrichs, nay. I think we should have prioritized things appropriately.
We tried.
Anyway,
So,
The ayes have it.
the first reading,
6 to 3, yeah?
yeah.
So we need a motion.
That's a motion to extend the meeting.
That was a motion to extend the meeting, that was not
That was not anything
not
except
anything
that.
else.
So we need Curtis to make a motion to first reading.
I move that the town council executes the first reading on ordinance 2025 TAC 09, amending chapter 175 zoning, article 2 definitions, article 12 use and dimensional standards, section 175 TAC 53 table of land uses, article 21 off-street parking, section 175 TAC 111 general requirements of the town code to include lodging houses within the zoning ordinance.
I'll second that with one addition. It is Article 12.1.
Thank you.
And further, that the public hearing be set for August 4th,
The public hearing can be set for August 4th.
2025.
Second.
Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded it. Is there any comment?
I guess my only comment is, I really want to talk about it, but clearly that's not what we're going to do tonight. Do people want to approve first reading and go straight to public comments without having our own discussion first?
Well, we can discuss it all we want after the public hearing.
It's true.
Right.
We also still have 20 minutes. So.
No, that's
I
fine.
mean, we can discuss it some now. We got time.
I mean,
I'm just wondering, since we have Mr. Goose and Representative Howland here, if we have any questions for them, could we try to ask them the questions now?
We can.
Maybe we could get them to tell us something about
Approach
it.
the bench.
All right, so this has been like a 2-year battle, actually, and it definitely targeted Durham. Specifically, I'll give you historically, we had the 3 unrelated ordinance. The 3 unrelated ordinances really built on the lodging house standard, because it's actually 3 outsiders in a single unit dwelling. If you have more than 3 outsiders, it is no longer classified as a single-family home. It changes use. The use would be a lodging house, and the lodging house is one of the. It's a very useful kind of housing type. It's also an incredibly stigmatized kind of housing type. So here it's stigmatized because it's students, but transitional housing is stigmatized in other areas. Recovery houses are stigmatized in other areas. And in fact, we had a bill before us to try to make people in a recovery house act like a family so it wouldn't change use to be a lodging house. And so the bill itself that went through is horribly written. I tried my best to explain the concept of uses in Concord, and it didn't work very well. And so what we're hopeful of, and you'll hopefully have your council look it over, is that what we're saying is that when you add, we're taking the definition out of Life Safety 101, which defines what a single unit dwelling and a 2-unit dwelling is. When you add more than 3 outsiders to that, it technically undergoes a change of use and becomes a lodging house. And so what we're doing is you're defining what a lodging house is and where they can occur. And so you've done that in 3 zones. Technically, any single family home then in that area could ask to undergo a change of use. They would have to go to the planning board. They have to show that they meet sewer and water requirements, but since they're all likely going to be on your sewer and water, that's pretty easy standard. Lodging houses are super funky, unlike your apartments. If you do an apartment or anything else really, there's square foot per occupant. Lodging houses, they do not exist. So a lodging house can technically have up to 16 people, and then it changes use to a dormitory with no square footage, which makes it really kind of scary. So think of it, you have a single family home, it changes use to a lodging house, and it's kind of funky figuring out how many people can fit in there, and that's why most municipalities don't want to do it. Unfortunately, I tried to do an amendment to come up with what square footage was per occupant in a lodging house. I tried to use Massachusetts' standards, which is 80 square feet per occupant per bedroom, or 60 if they share it. I could not get traction. They said come back next year and try to file it. So I think by doing this, it gives you an out. When I was at committee and I talked about how badly this is written, I said change of uses still apply, right? Because it's a foundation of modern zoning. And they said yes. And so I think defensively you can say, we do allow lodging houses. These are the zones that we allow lodging houses. We don't allow them in other zones. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I think that is a good start.
So do we have to allow 16 people? Is there any control over?
No, you have no control.
Okay.
So the control simply is, does it meet sewer and water?
And fire code?
So fire code actually, thank you, that's a good point. So any new lodging house, any single family home that went to a change to a lodging house, and so in a lodging house it's 1 unit where they're all sharing a kitchen. Any new one that has 5 or more occupants in it requires a sprinkler system. So it's onerous if you did it in sewer and water because it's going to add some cost to it, and I think we've talked about the payback. I think one of the proposals in a rural area, it potentially could be, it would be really prohibitively expensive because you have to have a tank to have the sprinkler system run on it, so.
So I think it's important to, before you go off too far,
I'm sorry.
forget everything you said about the rural area. We're not allowing
Oh,
it.
Everybody's laughed, so it can't be that bad.
The thing to remember, so Al did a really good job of explaining what the lodging house is. And what our zoning is going to do with it is we're going to allow it only in professional office, Churchill, and courthouse. And I have a list here that Michael Barron got from Brendan, the fire chief, as to where our existing lodging, things that he considers lodging houses are. So I'm going to list those for you. 15 Main Street, which is central business technically, isn't it? That's on
Which side of the street is it on?
Oh, that's PO. Churchill. So 15 Main Street, which is Churchill. 13 Madbury, that's central business. 46 Madbury, 48 Madbury, those are up in is that either PO or RA. 46 and 48 Madbury, that's up across from the library. 6 to 8 Mill Road, so that's RA. And those are the ones that he lists. So you can see, actually, we're, right now, so many of the things that are lodging houses are actually not even in the places we're saying we want them. But these are the places that we believe that they would fit best, because we're not going to go and say they belong in RA. No way. So so I think it's important that it's professional office, which is like all the frats and student housing. It's Churchill, which people are probably going to complain about, and it's courthouse, which is Dover Road and New Market Road, really.
And that Churchill already has rooming houses, is that right? Wasn't some, I think one of the, I think
They have
those are, there's one called a rooming house in Churchill.
The 15 Main Street is Churchill, yeah.
Let me just add one other thing. The whole basis of this, remember, is that this House Bill 457 states specifically that you can have, nobody can say that you can have less than 2 renters per bedroom. Without doing this, every single-family house that is now renting to 3 can rent to 6. Think about that. And that's why this was the best way with our, quote, ad hoc committee, which consisted of Paul, myself, Todd was involved, Brendan Sullivan from the fire, Em was involved. We all had our different ideas of how to do it, and this seemed the most logical way to do it. We are going to pass it by the town attorney. Doing the first reading doesn't mean that, if the town attorney came out and said, no, it's not going to do it either, I don't know what we're going to do. But we hope that the town attorney will say, yeah, this can fly. Now, that doesn't mean that 2 years from now, the legislature won't come back and make some onerous thing that you don't have to follow state fire laws.
So do we expect the town attorney then to review this language prior to the public hearing and be able to make comment?
We'll have an answer, yes, well, very soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're waiting to see if the governor will sign 457, is that correct?
Could be any day.
It's really likely. I mean,
Yes.
This was specifically, the governor told chair of my committee, is this targeting Durham? And they said, yes. I said, okay. Yeah, it's going to go.
And one last thing, Al worked really hard in the House to get this. When it went to the Senate, they wiped out all the bad part. And it just said, essentially, you can't discriminate. And somehow it came back to the Senate exactly the way the House bill had been put in to start. What can I tell you?
Councilor Friedrichs?
I'm just wondering, what is the rationale, or so why not prohibit lodging houses in all districts, which is what we had 4 months ago? Or alternatively, why not allow them in areas where economically it would be more viable to have another form of housing. And the reasoning behind my line of questioning is that I think we are all really concerned about our downtown viability, and putting in like additional frat houses or things like that, which would be considered lodging houses, I don't think is going to help our downtown viability.
Well,
Wouldn't that then be a dormitory?
Yes,
it would.
those would be dormitories.
You got
More than
dormitories,
60.
you got fraternities. What you would be doing is you'd be kicking the can down one more year, and then I'll spend a year listening to Al complain about how the House is trying to break the law we just filed. We're trying to pass a law that the legislature can't argue with.
Right.
I agree. I think what got you here in the first place was they thought you discriminated against students. And we did, whatever our ad hoc was, we talked about that right away. That was the nuclear option. You just don't allow lodging houses in any zone. But I'm telling you that
It won't work.
It will not work. I think the thing that came through loud and clear throughout this whole session was allegations of discrimination and coming after what was seen as allegations of discrimination. And it was, I think if you say you don't allow lodging houses anywhere, people are going to say, why? It doesn't work anywhere in your town. And I think that will draw scrutiny. So I think, as I mentioned, they're a useful kind of housing, but they're the highly stigmatized kind of housing. And so I think saying no is a disservice to your community. Where do they fit is a great question. They do fit somewhere in your community, and they should be. And I think that's your discussion that you'll do after your public hearing.
And it's not necessarily alleged discrimination. I've had people come to my public hearings in the planning board saying, absolutely, we're allowed to discriminate against the students, so we're going to. Well, it's coming back and biting us in the ass.
I would just note, though, that there are a number of communities in New Hampshire that don't allow lodging houses anywhere. Durham does not allow certain types of other housing, such as manufactured housing.
Right.
And the number of towns that have signed on in opposition to this bill include Raymond and a number of other quite conservative Republican towns. So I think it is still a little interesting to see what will actually happen at the governor's desk.
Right, and it may well be that those people who have signed on, some of them Republican towns, will convince the governor not to sign it. But at least getting going here, as soon as we post the public hearing, as we said before, if it passes, a state law that comes in after that, normally against a town law, can override it, but this is not something, it's not the same thing. We're just doing where it can be located. So it's not doing anything to destroy that less than 2 per bedroom.
No, I mean, I can't tell you. It's been a long ride. It's been 2 years. I don't know what's going to happen, but you should totally be prepared for that 60-day deadline. I have a strong feeling this is going to pass. So there were not, to your point about the Republicans, there were not the majority of the Republicans were pushing this. It was the Democrats and that we did. So I have a sense that this is going to pass.
Let's be clear. It was paid for by a developer from Durham who is dissatisfied with a decision of the planning board and wants to make money out of this. And he got those students organized. He got them to Concord. He got caught voting in Durham when he lives in Madbury. That's what's behind this. And that's what makes me
Be that as it may.
very
That's why we're
angry.
asking.
I wish it had been different. I tried.
It's my last term. I'll say what I want.
I did my hardest to try to fix the language. I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. I think we've tried to come up. There were people saying that we drew more scrutiny to Durham because we tried to be proactive. If we had not done this to start with and you had 60 days, you would have been due.
So you think politically that if we do this, they will no longer be as apt to criticize Durham for our exclusivity somehow?
Oh, no.
Of course so.
They still will. Trust me, they
will.
will. Yes.
But I think you got to go back to the fact that lodging houses for a type of housing. It was used a lot back in the olden days. We have places that are called rooming houses already defined, even though they're not allowed. And if you're going to have a lodging house, you'd want to put it in close to amenities, because most people that are in a lodging house, if it wasn't a student lodging house, are people that need services that are close by, because sometimes they struggle with transportation and all of the other things that they need to try and get up and around and a step higher up. So that's, you know, on the other side of.
I'm not sure that you couldn't
We have a motion in a second.
require a manager in a lodging house. You know, there may be other things that can be done. If you are concerned that it's going to be into certain areas that we're allowing it, and you're concerned it could be, you might be able to get away with saying our lodging houses can only have 8 people, but because of the state fire, allowing up to 15, we're going to stay at that.
I don't know. I mean, I had 174, which is like you can't limit number of bedrooms, so
Right. This is the best way to do it.
I think this is the best way.
So we do want to end this meeting, I think.
I think what we want to do is schedule a
10:45.
approve the scheduling of the public hearing for
So are we
the
okay
August.
taking a vote right now then?
I think so.
Okay.
And you already did
Anybody
I've
that.
already made the motion, it's been seconded
Yeah.
by
Yes, it
Councilor
has.
Ford.
So we'll go ahead and take the vote then. Counselor Grant?
Heather Grant, aye.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Cy Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Curtis Racier, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Friedrichs, aye.
Good. Vote carries.
you, Al.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for your hard work, gentlemen. Thank you.
I'll move that we adjourn. I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second that.
All right, we get the vote.
Okay, Counselor Grant?
Aye.
Robin vote aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Cy Nadell, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Darrell Ford, God, yes.
Curtis Racier, aye.
He's gone.
Eric Lund, aye.
Thank you, Paul.
Friedrichs, aye.
I saw
Meeting
you
is
this
adjourned.
afternoon. I saw you this afternoon walking.